Hi everybody and welcome to this lesson where we're going to be discussing how to install Ruby on Rails on a Mac. Now there are several steps to this and they involve making sure that we have Xcode installed, and if not, installing Xcode or Xcode's command line tools. Then we'll install Homebrew. After that we'll install a Ruby version manager which helps us move between different versions of Ruby. Then we'll install Ruby using the Ruby version manager, or RVM for short, and then finally we'll install Rails and several gems or packages that we need to run Rails successfully. So let's jump right in and take a look at how we can install Xcode or Xcode's command line tools. So what you need to do is open up your terminal. Now if you don't know how to open up terminal, on your Mac, up here in the top right hand corner on the search icon, you can type in terminal, which I already have, so there you go, terminal, and it pops up. Alternatively, you can go into your Finder, go to Applications, go down to Utilities, and there's terminal there. Now I suggest you drag and drop terminal onto your dock here because you're going to be using it a lot throughout this class. Not only in this lesson, but pretty much in every lesson to come. So go ahead and do that now. Okay, let's pop open terminal. And let's type in this command and see what we get. Xcode -select -p space -p enter. And there we go, Applications Xcode Contents Developer. If you see something similar, that means Xcode is installed. If I have a look at my list of applications here, scroll across, there's Xcode there. If you do not have Xcode installed, don't worry, just open up the App Store. Here we go here, from the dock. Type in Xcode. There you go, pops open. And click on Install. Mine says open because I already have it, so you'll need to click on Install. That will take a few minutes to run, so go ahead and do that now if you don't have Xcode. Now if you don't want to run it from the App Store, you can also run it from the terminal. Let's have a look. So here in terminal you can type in Xcode -select space install. Now it's telling me there command line tools are already installed, so that won't run for me, but it will run for you if you do not have it installed. You can verify then that the installation was successful by running gcc space -- version. And that's giving me back some information about my Xcode installation. So that's what you need to do to install Xcode. If you don't have Xcode installed, you are going to run into errors throughout this class. So go ahead and make sure that's working now. With Xcode installed, we need to install Homebrew. So let me pop open my web browser here. Here we go. Homebrew is at www.brew.sh. And again, if Homebrew is not correctly installed, you are going to get errors. What you need to do here is copy this line into your terminal. So copy, pop back open terminal, Command and V to paste it in, and hit enter. Now I already have Brew installed, so I'm not going to go through with the full installation, but you will need to. So as you can see here, the script will install, and it's going to install all the Brew files here. So you can press return to continue with the installation. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to abort because, as I said, I already have it installed. Once the installation is complete, you can verify that it has been successful by typing in brew doctor. Give that a second to run, and as you can see here, it spits back some information about my installation. I have no errors. I have a couple of warnings, but I have no errors, so everything is okay. If you do have Brew installed, you can always type in brew update to update to the latest version of Brew. The next thing we need to do is install a Ruby version manager, and for that we're going to use RVM. Now I have tried RBENV, but I couldn't get it to work for me, so I switched to using Ruby version manager, or RVM, and this has worked flawlessly ever since. So the first thing we need to do to install RVM is use Brew. So back to our terminal, just let me clear the screen. There we go. And what we need to do is say brew install GPG. Give that a minute to run and let's see what we get. Okay, so the message I get is that this piece of software, GPG, is already installed and up to date. So I don't need to reinstall it or update it because it's already there. But you may not have it on your system, so go ahead with the command brew install GPG. Now, back on the RVM website, over here on the right hand side, click install. And then you need to copy the GPG key from here. So highlight that out, and it's a pretty long command here. So highlight that out, Command and C, back to our terminal, Command and V, and run that, and that will install the security key for RVM. Next, you need to install RVM with the command from the RVM website. So back here, and use this command here. Back to your terminal. Just let me get rid of this here. So we've copied our command from the RVM website, paste it here, and what you need to append to the end of this is after bash space -s space stable. Now I'm not going to hit enter on this because I already have RVM installed, as I mentioned at the beginning of this lesson, but you hit enter here and that will install RVM. When you're finished installing RVM, quit the terminal and restart it. So to quit terminal, you close it here, top left hand corner, quit terminal, down in my dock, open it up again. Okay, so we have our terminal back open. Now it's time to install Ruby. And how do we go about doing that? First, let's check what versions of Ruby are available to install using RVM. And we do that with the command rvm list known. Hit enter, and there we go. We get a full list of all the different versions of Ruby that can be installed using RVM. We're going to install Ruby 2.6.3. So this lesson and this class and all the lessons to come will be written using Ruby 2.6. So how do we install Ruby? Well, we simply type rvm install Ruby -2.6.3 and hit enter on that. And as I already have Ruby 2.6.3 installed, it's already telling me that it's there. So I can reinstall it with the command here, rvm reinstall, but I'm not going to do that. But you will install Ruby now, or install the version of Ruby 2.6.3. That'll take a few minutes, so give that a go and come back. If during the installation of Ruby here, you get an error, which is called a status 1 error, this is related to your homebrew and RVM installation. So go back to your homebrew installation and double check that, and double check that you have RVM installed correctly. When your Ruby installation finishes, to check that it's successful, simply type in ruby-v. And there we go. So I'm using Ruby 2.6.3. In the future, if you wanted to install another version of Ruby, you could do that simply by typing in the command again, Ruby followed by the version number. So a new version of Ruby might come out next week or next month. That could be Ruby 2.7 or whatever it might be. You simply type it in and install it. Then, to see the list of versions of Ruby installed in your system, you can simply type rvm list. And there we go. I have only one version of Ruby installed on this system, Ruby 2.6.3. And as you can see by the little legend here at the bottom, an equals followed by an asterisk symbol means that it's my current and default version. If you wanted to switch this, so if you had several versions of Ruby here, you could type in rvm use followed by the version number of Ruby that you want to use. And then again, run ruby-v to see what version of Ruby you're running. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Next we're going to look at installing the gem manager. And gem is how we install packages on Ruby. So what command do we need for that? Well, first let me clear the screen here. And let's just check. So say gem-v, and I have version 3.0.6. Now to update this, I can type in gem update -- system. Give that a minute to run and let's see what happens. Latest version already installed. Perfect. Next, let's install Bundler. Now don't worry too much if you don't understand exactly everything that we're doing at the moment, because throughout this lesson and lessons to come, and indeed the entire class, everything is going to become very clear, and we're going to be using similar commands again and again to reinforce your learning. So let's install Bundler. Gem install Bundler. Now I already have Bundler already installed, so what it's done here is it's updated it for me. So you give that a go and let Bundler install. Okay, what's next? Let's install Rails. So let me clear my screen here. First, let's see if we have Rails installed in the system, and we do that in a similar way to we checked Ruby. We simply type Rails space -v. Rails 6.0.0. So that's the version of Rails we're going to use in this class. For you to install Rails on your system, assuming you don't already have 6.0 installed, you simply type in gem install Rails -v. So we're telling it what version we want to install, and it's very important that we have the same version installed. So you and I have the same version installed, because that means that the commands that I'm using throughout this lesson and lessons to come will work exactly as they do for me, for you, and on your system. Now what we also want to do is omit or not install documentation that comes with Rails because it's pretty heavy and can take a long time to install. So the commands that I'm adding to the end of this line here are omitting the documentation. Okay, so as you can see, I already have Rails installed, so it's not going to do anything for me, but for you this is going to take a few minutes, so come back to me when you're done. Now again, you can verify that your Rails installation has been successful by running rails -v 6.0.0. Perfect. Now there are a few final things that we need to install, one being Yarn. So if you go to yarnpkg.com, so you can read all about Yarn here, what it is and what it does, but it basically caches every package that you will install as we move through this class. So back to our terminal. Now again, I already have Yarn installed, but what you need to type in is brew install yarn. Hit enter. Oh, misspelled brew, of course. B-4-E-W, there we go. So that'll take another couple of minutes, so come back to me when you're done. Okay, once Yarn has finished installing, the final piece of software we need to install, for the moment anyway, is Chrome driver. So here you are, here I have it here, so you can just type in Chrome driver into your search bar and that'll bring you here the Chrome driver. So what is it? It's an open source tool for automated testing of web apps. And later on in the class, when we start testing, we'll be putting Chrome driver to use. So how do we install it? Well, very simply, as we've done previously, let me just clear the screen here. We say brew, make sure I spell it correctly this time, install Chrome driver. And let's see what happens. Okay, we get an error, and why was that? Because they've changed the location of Chrome driver. So instead of brew install Chrome driver, we need to type in brew cask install Chrome driver. Let's copy that, paste it there, hit enter, and that should work for us this time. So that's installing, so give that a few minutes and then come back to me. Okay, there we go. You can see at the end, success message. Chrome driver was successfully installed. Perfect. Okay guys, so in this lesson we've looked at how to install or make sure that we have Xcode installed. We've installed and checked our homebrew installation. We've installed a Ruby version manager, which I cannot recommend enough. RVM is fantastic and it's going to save you a lot of headaches. Like I said, I did try RBENV or RBENV, but I couldn't get it to work and it wouldn't switch Ruby versions for me, so I went and used RVM. We then installed Ruby using RVM, we updated our gems, we installed Bundler, we installed Rails, and that's it. So hopefully now you should have a very similar system or a very similar Ruby on Rails setup that I have. You should have Ruby 2.6.3, you should have Rails 6.0.0, and you should have the packages installed that we've gone through. So in the next lesson, we'll look at installing a text editor and the text editor that I use and my setup. So that's it for this lesson. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next.